Fuji gang, welcome back. Today we're going through my favourite images that I shot in New York City and Austin, Texas on the Fuji X100v. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm JP, a London-based photographer, and I won't stop talking about that camera. I was incredibly lucky to be flown from the UK to the USA to create content for W Series, which is a female-only single-seater racing series that was competing at the Austin Grand Prix. And I had such an incredible time. It was truly life-changing. And once the race weekend was up, I went back via New York so I could take photos for 4 days. I found that one of the best ways to improve as a photographer is to listen to other photographers talk about what they were thinking as they were taking a specific photo. That way, when I come across similar situations to what that photographer was shooting, I'm able to apply some of the things that I learned from them to create my own photos. And so with this in mind, we're going to flow from area to area, and I'm going to talk about my experience, what I was trying to shoot, what I was trying to capture it, to hopefully give you some ideas and some inspiration for when you're next out shooting. And I was fortunate enough to explore so many different areas, and I've got a little list. We went to Midtown, Brooklyn Bridge, Dumbo, Central Park, the Oculus, Washington Square, where there's a fantastic little surprise. I've got all the chapters highlighted below, so if there's a particular area that you really want to see, then you can skip around and find it. I'll be sharing all of these images on my Instagram, as well as plenty other hopefully interesting things, so if you want to check that out, Instagram's here. And so with all that said, let's kick things off with the area that I think people most associate with New York, which is Midtown Manhattan. So Midtown has a special kind of buzz to it. It's the area where there's all of the incredible, iconic buildings. You've got super tall skyscrapers. You've obviously got Times Square. There's a lot of energy because everyone's kind of in motion. Everyone's kind of doing something. And there's a real blend of different people. There's the classic New York businessman that probably take no shit from anyone. And you've also got the kind of more creative types. And there's just a whole spectrum of different people. And as my hotel was nearby, I spent a lot of time hanging around, shooting, and enjoying the area. And one of the things that I very quickly noticed is that with all of these tall skyscrapers built on a block structure, this really impacted and had an effect on the available light to shoot at ground level. But when there was available light kind of bending its way around these enormous tall buildings, I was then placing a subject on a very dark background, and there was a lot of contrast between the two. And I was in the hunt for these little pockets, these little patches of light that kind of sporadically sprung up as the sun yeets itself across the sky, creating forever changing conditions. And another side effect of these really tall glassy buildings was the amount of reflections that were available. And in all honesty, I typically have quite a hard time getting behind reflection photography, because TikTok photographers have absolutely ruined the genre, overdoing it and making quite dull compositions. But with all of these reflections, I felt quite compelled to try and create something a little bit different. I was creating images with quite twisted perspectives where you couldn't really work out what was going on straight away. And I did this by shooting directly into a puddle, which was then reflecting a skyscraper that was kind of in the distance. And whilst that wasn't technically reflections off the big glassy buildings that inspired me, I also particularly enjoyed finding little patches of light that were bouncing off these huge skyscrapers, causing unique illuminations of weird scenes. I personally find it really satisfying to try and take photos of mundane things in a kind of interesting way, and utilising this light that's bouncing off these huge skyscrapers onto an interesting subject is such a easy way to make things much more interesting than they should be. And so, as everyone probably knows, yellow is the colour of New York. With so much of the city being steel and glass, the little pops of yellow from the traffic lights, from the cars or the cabs, the food trucks, there's just little bits of yellow everywhere, and I love the contrast because yellow is the colour of happiness, creativity, enlightenment. Grey from steel is very flat, very mundane, and I just love the two kind of like working with each other or working against each other, depending on which way you look at it. And it felt just like very interesting from like a colour psychology point of view. And as I was there in the autumn, many of the leaves were kind of yellowing, turning this like beautiful golden colour. And I found so much satisfaction just like creating scenes of all yellow everything, which you'll probably notice is a bit of a consistent theme throughout all of this video. And when the sunlight was on my side, it just beautifully illuminated this rich yellow, and it was just absolutely 10 out of 10. And if you were curious, all of these images have been edited with my free presets, so if you want them, you can get them for free, link in bio, just the highlight. One afternoon when I was having my lunch, I was sat across from these two lovely ladies who heard my British accent and wanted to have a little chat. And I asked them where would they recommend that I go and take photos? And they got into this super heated debate whether I should go to the High Line or not. And so the High Line is this new public park that runs up the side of Manhattan, and it's been converted from an old goods railway into this beautiful public park. I also didn't get to explore it for too long. I loved the trees that surrounded the path that were turning this beautiful golden colour, which not only created a sense of separation from the hustle and bustle, but it also kind of matched the rustic brown tones that were throughout the space and really gave heritage back to this old railway. And the space is clearly enjoyed by the locals, and I am so glad that I took Mary's advice and headed on down to the High Line, because it was a welcome break from the rest of the city, and it led to some really quite interesting photo opportunities that I'm glad I got to shoot. Pigeon Party! As I was walking along heading to the Jarvis Centre, who decided to not let me in, I was walking behind this group of a couple of girls who stopped kind of in the middle of the path, and they were looking at what was going on ahead. They turned around and were like, nah, we're bouncing, we're getting out of here, this is weird. And it's quite understandable really, because there was this huge just like gathering of pigeons, but like the budding little photographer that I am, I was like, this is worth the poop risk. And so I got closer and took some photos. It was honestly so bizarre. I have never seen so many birds that are insanely scatty through every other aspect of life. Yet in this scenario, they were just there chilling. They weren't fighting, they weren't flying, they were just sat there as if they were like watching an opera or something. And after about a minute, this dude came out with the biggest sack of bird feed, and oh my god, it felt like there was a helicopter going off overhead. It was so loud, there was wind going everywhere. It was so hectic. And with several hundred birds flying overhead, I was like, all right, poop risk, too high, I'm out of here. And on one of the Sundays that I was there was this avenue that they'd shut off for kind of probably community reasons, try to get people kind of like out and about, right? And what was so cool is there was this saxophonist called, I can never say his name, Augie Bello, I think, who is honestly incredible. And my best friend showed me him a couple of years ago, and he was just playing in the street with a couple of pals. And I didn't get too many images because I was enjoying the music so much, but I did get this one photo that I particularly like. And so what I like about it is that the off-axis horizon kind of gives this image a feeling of chaos and a bit of mess, which is what's kind of associated with jazz music and saxophone and real like creative energy. And then by having a very clear subject whose torso is now kind of vertical, that then gives some sense of structure and grounding in this chaos. And I feel like this really captures the magic of music and interpretation and just like general expression through music and sound, and I just love it. And now I completely get why everyone in New York is so fond of Central Park. It's a real nice contrast between the straight, rigid, square, tall buildings that kind of engulf everything around it. And I feel like the flowing nature of the paths and the rock formations and just how everything's kind of like put together, it kind of flows very nicely, which is very different to the kind of very jagged, either this way or that way nature of a block structure kind of in a city. And this is what I think really creates that relaxed sense of energy within Central Park. And so whilst I was there, I wanted to try and capture this energy and this difference and this flow compared to the straight, rigid, square buildings that I really enjoyed shooting like 5 minutes ago. And I was playing around with perspectives because there's quite a lot of elevation change. There was points where you could climb up on top of things and shoot down at stuff. You could also shoot kind of from down there up at things. And that perspective really gives photos meaning, because you're almost like viewing the photo as I am looking at this scene from the perspective of X. And that could be something as simple as you're shooting over someone's shoulder, so it's their perspective of what they are looking at. And sadly, as I visited on my last day, I didn't get that much time to explore it, which in hindsight was probably a mistake, but in future I'm definitely going to make sure that when I go back to New York, I'm spending a lot of time in Central Park. So initially, I didn't have any intention of going to Washington Square. I was walking down Fifth Avenue to head all the way down downtown, and I came across this kind of big open square with hundreds of people. Usually when I see big crowds, I don't know what they're up to. They're hard to photograph big crowds, and you kind of have to get really up close and personal, and so I usually just make my way around them. But as I got closer, I saw a dog in this ridiculous Halloween outfit. And I looked up and the whole place was filled with dogs dressed up, because only in America it was a dog Halloween costume competition with hundreds, and I mean hundreds of dogs. And I was in absolute heaven with all of these good boys looking so proud of their dope outfits, just having an absolute blast, because there were so many people like me just being like, oh, this is amazing. And I had so much fun talking to dog owners, just interacting with little puppers, and yeah, it was just 10 out of 10. Brooklyn Bridge is where I probably spent the longest period of time photographing one kind of single scene. And I was really enjoying just playing around with compositions, kind of pushing and pulling, seeing what I could come up with, trying new ideas. And it was so satisfying. And off either side of the footpath, there's this road rolling past, which I really enjoyed trying to capture cars as they came through. There are all these lines surrounding this really nice frame that I found. And I wanted to nail a yellow cab just like bang on in the middle. But with all good things photography, I was setting up for one shot, and another more beautiful shot turned up when this beautiful red Challenger comes perfectly past in the lane that I wanted, with no cars around. And I was just like, I'm done. I don't need to take any more photos here. I've nailed the best photo that I'm gonna get today. So big thumbs up for that one. And usually in my photography, I like to photograph happy things, positive things, feeling kind of like energy. But this was just like a weird feeling that I never usually get. And I was like, I'm gonna really dive into this and to see what I can create. I felt like I was in this huge, powerful, overbearing birdcage, because there was these huge, thick wires just like towering over me, like surrounding me. And so I was trying to use these wires to create this like thick, kind of engulfing feeling around the frame, where you're kind of like looking off into the distance and you've got a clear subject on the horizon that you can see, and this is where you want to get to. But these huge wires are crisscrossing around you, they're blocking you from where you want to get to. I've never really felt anything like it, and I hope that these images kind of do it justice. So after crossing the Brooklyn Bridge from Manhattan Island to Brooklyn, I went to this area called Dumbo, which is right next door. And this is where Brooklyn's most famous Instagrammable location is. And so this super famous spot has got these beautiful red cobbled stones that kind of lead you towards the Manhattan Bridge, and the Empire State Building is perfectly lined up underneath the bridge. And this area was littered, and I mean littered, with people trying to get exactly the same photo. Everyone was getting in each other's way, everyone was a little bit aggy, and I was just like, nah, I am not getting involved with this. I'm gonna see what I can do, if there's anything creative that I can come up with. And yeah, I was pretty pleased with how it turned out. And so as I was taking photos, this guy just sat down in the chair in front of me, and I was like, this is perfect. And although I really like this original, I felt really inspired by one of my favourite photographers, a guy called Alan Schaller, to do a little bit of Photoshop work and to create something a little bit more unique. And so by using pure black, you can really emphasize the subject in your frames. And to me, I really wanted to emphasize this dude, his posture, his outfit, his general demeanor. And by eliminating as many other distracting factors as I can really put the focus on him and then the environment that I want you to look at. And I really like this photo. I find it quite interesting, but I feel like it's also quite polarizing. So let me know whether you dig it, you dug it, you don't like it. And yeah, let me know whether you want to see more of it. Let me know whether you're a photography purist. But yeah, I dig it. And after I was done shooting this guy, I then wandered down to the waterfront and just started taking photos, playing around with the Manhattan Bridge, with the Brooklyn Bridge. And yeah, I just really found it satisfying playing around with scale, because you've got in the distance these skyscrapers you know are absolutely humongous underneath this seemingly indescribably big bridge, and in real life it's huge. But I really want to try and emphasize that as much as possible, and I feel like I kind of did that in these photos. So the Oculus is probably one of my favorite places to photograph, because with so many beautiful repeating elements that give a lovely sense of depth, it was just fun to just point your camera at anything and to take nice photos. And although I was shooting in a super overcast day and it would probably be beautiful or more beautiful in direct harsh sunlight, I was still able to get some fantastic photos I was super happy with. And so I particularly like this photo of a guy taking a photo. Shooting from this angle not only creates perspective from the dude looking at his phone, but it also shows the phone's perspective, the phone looking at the scene as he takes a photo. We as a viewer are seeing what he's seeing and seeing what the phone sees, which really makes this whole photo work. With these two stages of perspective and where the focus is on his phone, this gives us a real sense of depth. We've got foreground, a midground, and the foreground. We also get this depth with these subtle repeating lines from the left of the frame, and less so but still there on the right side of the frame, getting gradually closer together. And you may also notice that the horizon is not perfectly level, and I played around with this for so long, and I feel like having a horizon that's slightly off kilter means that things don't feel perfectly level, which feels like the image is almost falling towards that corner where this man is taking his photo. And that to me really makes this image more dynamic, makes this photo more interesting. Yeah, I just love it. And I also like this image for different reasons. It feels like there's this light streaming through the roof into this kind of dark, cavernous space. And this woman is moving from the light into the dark. And I try to keep the lines as clean as possible to make sure that all of the lines we can see are pretty much complete and not interrupted by any other element. And this makes the image just feel so clean, and everything feels deliberate and in place. And right next to the Oculus is the 9/11 memorial, which was by far the most thought-provoking thing I've been to in such a long time. There are these two huge square caverns that are a good few meters deep, with water flowing elegantly off the top into the cavern below. And in the middle of these huge, big caverns, there's an even smaller, deeper cavern that feels bottomless. And after recently watching the documentary 102 Minutes That Changed America and seeing this bottomless pit, it honestly hit me in the feels. And all the way along the top of this memorial are the names of every single person who died. And I was like, okay, I'm going to create in honor of these people. And I'm not really sure what I was thinking at the time, not really sure what I was going to create, but I was like, it feels like the right thing to do, so I'm just going to go with it. And there was a group of people who were taking like smiling selfies at this very sentimental space, and I was like, I don't want anything to do with these people. And so I wandered round to the side where there was no one, so I could have a bit of space. And in the distance, I saw this bright blue flower, and there was no other flowers on this entire monument. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go over and take photos of that, because that felt very sentimental. And this is where the most mental thing happened. As I was taking photos, I didn't look at the name. And then when I was reviewing the photos in my camera, I was like, the only flower in this entire memorial is in James P. Hopper. And not gonna lie, when I noticed that, I was just like, this is weird. And yeah, in the most wholesome way, it felt like I was meant to be there. I was meant to be on that trip. I was meant to do that work. I was meant to come back to New York and to be there taking photos, follow my curiosity. And that's something that I will never forget. Today, we're in Austin, Texas. It's a little bit different to usual. Usually we're going around London, but we're here for work, so we are going to be, exploring the town, making the most of this beautiful end of October sunshine, rather than being wrapped up in our coats. So although I've been here for work, I've been stuck inside the Circuit of Americas, just shooting content there. So the plan today is just to wander around and to explore whatever looks interesting. And so I'm used to a very sort of specific kind of city street photography. At least this is how I was thinking about it in my head, where I like to try and blend very iconic buildings with people and trying to create like very clear scenes where this is London and here's someone in London and this is a cool photo. But in Austin, as far as I'm aware, other than the Capitol building, there's no other kind of big iconic buildings. And so instead of trying to capture Austin that way, I was trying to think about it, okay, what is the vibe of the city and how can I capture that? And so I found that it was very sporty, it was very relaxed, it was very kind of creative by nature. And you have to let me know whether, if you're an Austinite, whether I've captured how you see the city or whether I've just got a completely different perspective because I was there for the F1. if you've made it all the way to the end, go and get your camera or get your calendar and plan for your next gonna go out shooting, because that's what we're all here for. We are here to take photos, to get everyone out and about, taking photos, living a more creative life. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, comment. You can get presets for free if you go on the link in the bio. And yeah, if you want to see more photos that I take, then my Instagram's here. And I think that's everything. Let's hope so. And so until next time, peace. Those are my photos on that bus, which is absolutely mental. That is still running around New York. Oh my god, I am so jealous.